So for today's tutorial, I'm going to share with you a few tips for doing detailed work using the dry brush technique. And for dry brushing, you can use any type or brand oil paint. Some of them might have more of a creamy blend based on the type of binder used. Some use safflower oil, some use linseed oil. So you'll find, they have different consistencies when you work with the different brands. So the paint is then diluted with 1 or 2 drops of sewing machine oil, and I usually mix it with a palette knife to get the desired consistency. So this kind of consistency, with experience you'll get a nice feel for it. It's for the lighter areas you want a real liquid consistency like melted butter. So the first brush I'm using here is a Princeton Select Oval Mop, and I like to use this. Well, before that we're going to dry it on I like to use a paper towel to dry it off, so after rubbing it a few times to get the paint off, I do a little sample on the side here to see what kind of shade, what kind of value I'll get once it's applied to the canvas. So to begin, I'm going to use some very light strokes. This is very little pressure on the brush. Imagine the brush is just kind of hovering over the canvas and barely touching the surface with each stroke. So we do some very swift light strokes. I kind of like to go with the grain of the canvas, but after covering a good area, I like to do a cross hatching technique so that I could get into those little divots, those little grooves in the canvas, so you get like a more smooth blend, a more smooth gradient. I find if you don't use too much solvent or you put too much pressure on the brush, you'll get like a grainy look on the canvas. So you want to get a smooth or realistic effect, you have to do some very light strokes, light swift strokes. One thing to notice here is that my hand is actually resting on the surface, and the weight of my arm is just exerted onto the drawing surface and not onto the brush. So I'm able to do light, quick strokes by just swiveling the fingers or swiveling the wrist a bit. So you want all the pressure to go on the sides of your hand, like the side of your palm. Yeah, so get some nice little swift strokes right here, so So here from the video, everything looked, pretty smooth. Later what I'll do is show you a close-up picture, because the closer you get, the more grainy it will look. You see a lot of people on YouTube doing dry brush videos. It looks really smooth, but you know, when you're really close to the drawing, you might think you're not getting the same effect, you know, and it's just the video will make it look a bit smoother. So I'll show you an actual close-up photo, so you know, you can see how grainy it is. One question many people ask is, how do you know when it's time to dip the brush again? Because to tell the truth, you could just keep using this swivel motion and it will still have paint on there. It's very hard to get rid of all the paint. So one thing to note is, while you're painting, you'll notice it will start to get more grainy after a while with the light pressure, and you'll be kind of tempted to put more pressure on the brush to get it darker, but you'll see it start to get grainy. Once you're using that light motion and using the same strokes and it doesn't seem as smooth and it's starting to get a bit grainy, then it's time to dip the brush again. Yeah, so right now we're going a little bit darker. So at this point, it's a little bit more pressure on the brush, still not too much. Yes, you can see my hand still kind of rested on the surface, you know. Yeah, man. Yeah, hand still rested on the surface, so we'll put a little bit more pressure on the brush. And the other thing to note is the area that I dipped the brush in has a little bit less of the sewing machine solvent, you know. So as a result of that, it come out a little bit darker. There's less medium mix with the oil paint. So what I did here, after I used up much of the darker paint, the brush was starting to dry out a bit, so I used the remainder on light areas. What I'm aiming for at this point is just to get a high value shading with as less grain as possible, or a smooth and realistic look as possible. You see it? So as you can see, take a little time, you know, it's not something quick. A lot of them videos on that you see with dry brushing, it's like time-lapse video, and it seems like they're doing it really fast, you know, but it is possible. But the faster you go, the more of a grainy texture you'll get. To get that realistic look, you pretty much have to take your time. Well, go on. I pretty much the same area, but also put layer upon layer. You see it? That's another way to get a nice realistic effect, or a nice three-dimensional effect, you know? You do a layer and then you come back again and put on a next layer. It kind of give it a three-dimensional look. Kind of hard to tell with the video still. So as you can tell, when I dip the brush, you know, I try to get just the top of the bristles a little bit more. You don't want to get too much on the side, you know. So here, yeah, we dry the brush, and I could see what kind of value I'm getting if I applied it there. So that looks a bit dark, so I'm probably going under the eyelid. Yeah, man, see that? Yeah, that's dark enough for the eyelid, you know. So yeah, as I said, when you dry the brush on the paper towel, you get an idea of what the value of the brush currently is, or how dark the brush currently is. See? So yeah, man, we'll just apply this under the eyelid. Later on, we're actually going to make this a little bit darker, so this will be the first layer of the eyelid. And as you can see, it looks a bit grainy there, so you know, we're going to smooth that out in a bit. It's a good starting point. So at this point, you know, the brush isn't as dark as when I just started, so I'm going to just eventually move it down to the bottom where I could still use it for a lighter shading. Yeah, man, so here we go again, you know, going with the green. Very light strokes, less pressure than we use as far as going under the eyelid. Yeah, man, nice, you know. See.